When I talk about purpose, I always tell people it's not something that you discover. It's not like this light bulb goes off or you get struck by lightning, like, my purpose, I've discovered it. This is something that you build, that you engage, you get feedback, and then you engage some more.
For too long, entrepreneurs and business owners have been told they have to choose between profit and purpose. If you're tired of burning out, done chasing someone else's version of success, and ready to grow with more purpose, prosperity, and peace of mind, you're in the right place. Because every business has the potential to do good and do well. I'm Chase Friedman, and this is In Pursuit of Purpose, where strategy meets soul. Welcome back to In Pursuit of Purpose. Today, I am extremely excited to share this guest with you. He's a bit of a doppelganger, to be honest. He's also an expat living abroad in Spain with his family. So today, I'm joined by Jeff Hittner, executive coach, learning and development expert, founder of Ambitious Dads, actually a group called Founding Fathers I had a chance to be a part of some months back. Jeff has interviewed more than 200 high-performing fathers, and his work explores the intersection of leadership, ambition, fatherhood, and family life. So in this conversation, we're getting into one of the real tensions that so many of us, founders, entrepreneurs, working parents, face. How do you build something meaningful for yourself and your profession, your career, without sacrificing what you give to your family? Because a lot of us say and claim we're doing it all for our family, but if we're not careful, the business can easily get our best energy when the people we love the most get whatever is left over. So this is a conversation about ambition, presence, fatherhood, leadership, and what it actually means to build a life that works both at work and at home. Let's get into it. Jeff Hittner, how you doing? Good to have you on the show.
So great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So for all those listeners, Jeff and I have had a long-standing relationship, and we have never met in person, which is like become the norm in a lot of relationships nowadays. But the way that I connected with you was, I think, more than happenstance. I think it's like divine intervention. I was at a conference for 1% for the Planet that I belong to as part of my company, and connected with a guy out of Toronto and told him that I had just gotten back from a trip in Spain with my family. And he goes, "Oh man, you got to read this guy's blog or this Medium article, Jeff Hittner. And he's got this blog called I Moved to Spain to Become a Better Father." Is that quoting it properly?
Okay, so it's on Substack, and I have a friend who also has a very famous Substack, much more famous than mine. And he let me do a guest blog on that. And so I moved to Spain to become a better dad.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's true. So I moved my family here. I have two kids. They're two boys. They're 6 and 9. And we moved here during peak COVID at end of 2020. My youngest was born during the worst early COVID and early 2020 during the lockdown. And we lived in Manhattan, and it didn't feel like a safe place to have a baby and a toddler. So we ended up here in Valencia, and from the beginning, it was amazing because I felt like I had 2 days in one. And that's what I wrote the article about. It was like, I could be a full-time dad in the morning. At that point, my kids weren't really school age yet. So I could be a dad from the moment I woke up until 2 o'clock, maybe even 3 in the afternoon, and then start my work day at 2 or 3 in the afternoon and work until like 8 o'clock at night because working US hours. And it was amazing. And it really did feel like I found like a tear in the fabric of space-time continuum or something, because I was like, wow, how am I getting so much out of this day? I feel so fulfilled. And it was supposed to be 1 year, and we're over 5 years here now. And it's just the ability to work and engage with my family here is very different than in New York City, where I feel like I would be treading water to stay, cash flow positive and really thriving, where thriving here has a lot more variables to it than just your income.
I want to unpack everything you just said because I'm living that right now in the first few months of having moved to Spain. And you've been doing this for quite some time. But just as you said, I think time is relative here. And that's probably one of the biggest changes in lifestyle and work schedule. It's kind of like, the Greeks used to call it Chronos and Kairos. Chronos is like time by the watch that I think we live in most of sort of the Western world and segmenting our days. Kairos is more of sort of that flow time where it's boundless. But when people ask me, how do how do you manage your work and your job? And I know you consult and you do coaching and all these wonderful things, but it's true when you have a full day to kind of be and be present and then obviously compartmentalize, the work schedule, it's pretty liberating. So again, you were very much an inspiration for me ending up here. I've just moved my family in the beginning of the year. I mean, COVID obviously is a big conduit, but what was happening in your life and your career, your business prior to the move to Spain? What was that sort of inflection point for you and what motivated you to make that leap?
I think it was actually a values leap as much as anything else, right? I mean, I have dear friends, my closest friends in life, and they're in New York. And even though I lived a short subway or even a walk away, everyone was working crazy hours, whether they were bankers or consultants or in HR, you name it. And so the idea of being somewhere else didn't seem like I was necessarily losing out in some of these deeper friendships because I was gaining something else which I just adored, which was the ability to just breathe and be with my family and see my kids thrive. But the values piece is really, I talk about this a lot with my friends. When you fly into any European airport, but in particular into Spain, you land and they immediately have two lines, a line
I know where you're
for
going with this. I love it.
right? And then a line for everyone else. And you just feel from the moment you arrive here that there's values placed around that. And then we fly back to New York, right? And the flight back, let's say it gets you in at like 8 o'clock at night, right? So you have two small children and 8 o'clock is really 2 a.m. their time. And you're in an hour and a half long line to get through customs. There's nothing for families. And you're literally just carrying these two dead weights of like exhausted children. And no one cares. No one's moving you up front. That's just not.
No, you're not. Take a number. Get in line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, also here, my kids get off the bus and there's a playground. If one of my kids wants to play, I leave them there and the other one I take home. Like, there's nothing to be nervous about.
And is there a bar next to that playground? I'm just curious.
This one, no. If there was, I think that would be an every day.
Because that's also the norm, which
Yes.
is mind-blowing that we don't have back in the States.
Yes, there are lots of fun like playgrounds where you sit and definitely have your beer, and also, also pools, and beaches. So there's just this sense, and also the friendships that I've made here. No one's really spending too much time asking about what you do for a living. We're just talking about other things in life. And it's funny because my work now centers hugely around fatherhood. So I run a coaching practice and I'm a leadership expert. And my coaching practice is squarely focused on executive dads. So we look at leadership and fatherhood as sort of the ultimate leadership lab. And I came up with like this focus because I was literally walking on a beach where you live, Chase. About 3 years ago, my biggest client rolled off and I had space and time and I didn't have the stress of a New York City cost of living. And I just started getting curious, like, why are there so many executives that I speak to? And it's so easy for them to tell me what their goals are for their career, for their business. And then when I ask what their goals are as dads or with their families, they don't really have an answer. And I work with lots of CEOs that are women too. And answering this question wasn't nearly as hard for them. And I decided I was going to investigate and I started interviewing. I interviewed 50 ambitious dads is what I called it. And 50 is now 200. And all of that happened because I had the time to literally walk on the beach and be like, I just lost my biggest client by revenue. Let me think about what I want to build out here. And all of those things come from just a very different lifestyle, a very different mindset that I feel, I'm sure it can happen in lots of places, but it was not happening where I was living. And I love food.
Mic drop on the food. The two of us are obviously drinking that Kool-Aid. I mean, we're kind of chugging it a little bit. But let me ask you something. Why do you think there aren't more people that are making such a change or shift in their lives? I understand that there is certainly circumstance. You have a job, you can't move. There's a lot of reasons that I even conjured, and I own my own business, why I couldn't do it or why it wasn't convenient or why it would be too difficult. But everything you just shared and more, I think if you ask people deep down if they had a desire to do something like this, they would probably instinctually say yes, but never make the leap. Why do you think there aren't more people that are willing to give themselves the time and space to say what if and commit to that?
I think it's an easy answer. I think it's the same answer as why there aren't more people that are actually entrepreneurs, where they all say they want to start a business and then they can't go more than a month or two in the through the uncertainty of what that's like, and not knowing that, they imagined it would take 3 months to get any revenue and get it started off the ground, but it's actually 15 months. Right. So moving to a new place is all about uncertainty. It's all about being comfortable, like dealing with the bureaucracy, right? Which you also know what that's like. It's being comfortable, like learning new systems of like how the healthcare works, even though you have kids. And it's important that, you figure out the doctors, and figuring out like how to get a car, and figuring out how to rent your apartment. All of that stuff it's different, and different is stressful, and it can be scary, and there's a tolerance level for that kind of needs to be surpassed in order to make that change. And I think everyone wants to do it, but I don't think everyone's ready for it.
Yeah, I think you hit it. I mean, the uncomfortability, the uncertainty is one. I think there's also a degree of sort of fear, not only of the unknown, but at least I felt this. We are bred in this culture, especially back, and you see it in contrast now living outside of the United States, of you've always got to have your foot on the gas. You've always got to be pushing forward. You've got to have more and bigger and faster, and a little bit of that keeping up with the Joneses. I think there's a fear of, what if I took my foot off the gas for a moment to give myself a little bit of space and time to breathe and be with my family? Do I fall behind? Am I failing? Am I giving up? Like, there's this sort of ingrained, if you are not constantly driving and pushing forward, then you're being left behind. Is there something about like that in the psyche, not only just as a professional, but as a parent as well?
That goes to everyone's definition of success, right? Which is a big piece of the work I do with leaders and dads. We've been conditioned to have this idea of success, which is
Keeping up with them.
keep up with the Joneses, and you just don't really feel that to the same degree here. But even that, it takes some getting used to, right? Shifting your own mindset around what success means, what money means in the context of success, what family means, what friendships mean. I mean, you do have, there's sacrifices when you move countries. I mean, you're far apart from a lot of people that you care about, and that's also hard. And for me, the analysis was, as I mentioned before, well, I'm close to them now and I don't see them that much because the priorities aren't aligned. And so here, everyone I meet, the priorities are aligned. Today's a Wednesday. I got up at 4:30 to do a sunrise hike with 5 dads.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm going to suffer from it for the rest of the day. For sure, I'm tired. But it's a work day for all of us. We all did that. We were at the mountain by like 5:30 or so in the morning. We were home in our apartments by 10:30. So a solid 5 hours. And the day was just getting started. And there's that sort of possibility here and flexibility. And everyone that I was hiking with worked full time. But it's just our times are kind of different. Obviously, the majority of people that are expats that are living here are working remotely, but also some of the people that I'm friends with that aren't like from other countries, they have more flexibility as well. And if they don't have flexibility in their 9 to 5, well, you sure as heck bet they've got 30 holidays a year. So sure you've noticed.
Festivo. Every day is a festivo. Aside from geographically, and obviously there are cultural differences living in Europe, living in Spain than there are in the United States. But I think no matter where you are, you've done a lot of investigation and research and questioning around this. Why do you think, because I think we can have our cake and eat it too. You can have your success and quality of life. So why do a lot of ambitious parents, specifically dads, feel like they're constantly torn, choosing between work and career and home and family and even themselves, right? Like, why is there always having to be this sort of on off binary sacrifice, as opposed to let's try to find and elevate all the above?
The answer is more nuanced. So on the one hand, at the simplest level, it's because we think we have to be two different people, one person at work and one person at home. And it's quite exhausting to switch between the man you are at the office and the father or husband you want to be at home. And that doesn't need to be the case, but that's also a values misalignment, often with how we think about how we need to achieve and what success should be. But it's very possible to be sort of one engine and be the same man in both spheres, but it takes some sort of mindset shifts to do that. So that's on the sort of the belief side of things. On the other side of things, as dads, this is a very new generation of dads. Like, we all, as modern fathers, want to be quite different than our fathers were. We want to be a lot more involved, most of us. We want to fully co-parent. We want to be involved 50% in all the decision and all the upbringing of our children. And it's a lot harder than we realize because we don't have the role models of how to do that well. Our partners are very rarely prepared for that too. I mean, when you have two parents both fully emotionally invested in their kids and both with very different ideas of how that should be, or not used to like having to figure out sort of compromise and collaborate on such an emotional set of topics, that's also difficult. And then, you've also got this fact that too many of us carry around this false idea that we're supposed to be naturally good at fatherhood, otherwise we're just not good dads. And there is no mother that I have met that thinks motherhood is something that should be a natural thing. They work hard at it. Every mom I've met, they're doing research, they're talking to their other moms and their mom friend groups, and they're figuring out how to get through difficult things. We as dads also need to be doing that. We need to realize that this is hard. Most of us as men, which this is a pretty significant reality, we learn about our own emotions and how to emotionally regulate for the first time as parents, because we've never really been stretched that hard as when we are stretched emotionally as parents. And that creates a whole set of self-confidence issues, a whole set of challenges around not just how do we emotionally regulate ourselves, but how do we feel when we feel that sort of challenged and potentially incompetent at times, parenting the kids that we love more than anything in the world. So all of this comes into play when we're thinking about how difficult it is to be someone who is ambitious in their career and someone who is ambitious in their parenting. We got a long way to go.
And it's a constant learning process. And talking about stretched, I feel very stretched at the moment in my current family dynamic. It's cathartic to talk about it out loud with somebody, with another dad. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I got to be a part of this Founding Fathers group that you hosted, which was incredibly freeing and cathartic, because I realized in that group of dads, high performing, successful, some entrepreneurial, I had never had that forum before. I had never had, I have other male dad friends, but usually and rarely, if at all, in a setting and a dynamic that is a safe and comfortable and open and vulnerable place to share truly what's going on behind the scenes, right? Because this is something that I think, like in business, we feel like we have to have all the answers. We have to have it all figured out. We have to know what we're doing at all times. And to your point, right, there is no script, there is no playbook, and it is a constant learning curve. And we're constantly getting kicked on our ass, being made to feel humbled a little bit, that there's a long way to go. Let me just ask you then, we're really good at investing in ourselves in business. We take courses, trainings, we invest in the business itself. Why aren't we investing in ourselves as fathers?
I mean, again, the short answer goes back to this false belief that we should be naturally good at it, and therefore, there should be no reason to invest in it. But also, if we're not naturally good at it, the fear of learning and growing in it, it's a different muscle, right? It's this vulnerability muscle that we have to lean into. Some of the best conversations I've had with dads are the ones that were my child was really struggling in X, Y, and Z. And so we brought him to the therapist. And you know what the therapist said? This therapist said that she and I needed to talk. And what ended up happening is the person that needed to get the work was not first my child, but me, because it was like my triggers were coming out in the difficult moments with my child, and I wasn't going to be in a position to be the type of dad that I wanted to be. And that is a different type of vulnerability. And also, again, culturally, all of us as men, I've talked to lots of dads that were in our program too, in the Founding Fathers program, and they would say, I have a dad's night, once every couple of weeks with all these dads, and we go out and we don't talk about anything deep. Like, we talk about money, we talk about sports. To talk about the vulnerable things is a change. And so often you need, as I do, you need a facilitator for those types of conversations. It was interesting this morning during our hike. So I'd never met I had met the person who invited me, and he had 3 other men come on the hike. And one of the men, who is still new-ish to Spain, he wouldn't stop talking about money, about business, and I kept avoiding him as we were doing the hike. And it was like, that was like a typical USA hike conversation for me. And it was like, with the other guys, we were talking about, like, most of us had 2 kids, and we were talking about, like, what challenges we were going through. And we're talking about this amazing biking trip I was taking my kids on later this summer, and like, what were they doing? And you could just sense like the mismatch of the values of this one guy, who, by the way, had 2 small, like, he had a 4-month-old and an 18-month-old. But you could tell He wasn't there yet. He hadn't, and it takes time. It does. Like, just because you're in a place that values things differently than where you grew up doesn't mean that your values change. You have to want that, and you have to be mindful of it. But, you recognize it. That's sort of like, that was the old conversation that I didn't want to have.
Such a weird parallel universe I feel like we're living in. I've had these same interactions and experiences. I've encountered other expats, other people from the States, and we'll go to dinner, we'll go out for a meal, whatever it might be, and the conversation continues to revolve around the same things that we would talk about back in, America. And I'll say to my wife afterwards, she'll be like, "Hey, what'd you think? Do we like them? Do we have a good time? You seem like a little bit off." And I'll say to her, "Look, to be honest with you, I felt like I was having the same conversation in the same circumstance with the same type of people that we were back home. And that's not what we moved here for." And this is nothing against anyone, because I think it takes courage and incredible bravery to kind of uproot their family. But it's interesting. I found myself gravitating not towards fellow Americans and expats, but towards locals, because it's challenging me in a way to think differently and behave differently and operate in a new way. But it's interesting you say that. I mean, even moving geographically doesn't necessarily create the same mental, emotional, cultural change that oftentimes takes some more time and some more effort.
We were also talking about this morning, because, I moved from New York City, almost 20 years in New York City. And I remember I was maybe here a month, and I was like, what is that? Like, there was this new feeling I had, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was that there was something that had finally slowed down in me, that had been going, that I didn't even know was there, right? Like the New York City lifestyle, right? Which includes, by the way, like immediate access to everything, even immediate access to whatever your stomach wants. Like, I want Asian food today. I want
Amen.
food today, right? I can't get that here. I can maybe find some like exotic foods, but it's mostly Spanish and Mediterranean food. And it's just like recognizing that like slower by no means means worse. No way. And in fact, I probably, going back to being American, I'm one of the few people that probably still, I use Amazon here, and we do, and they do,
2 hands raised.
Like I do delivery of the stuff from the supermarket that wouldn't be fresh, like milk and water and stuff like that. So, and I look around like no one is doing Amazon delivery here.
You're like a pariah.
Yeah,
it's like I'm almost ashamed. I hide the Amazon boxes. Like, no, these aren't for me. These are for some other guy. I get my stuff local. And then
my kids will be like, "Hey, Daddy, it's a box inside a box," and I'll be like, "Wow."
I know.
Pointing out how
old habits die hard.
Destructive I am buying from Amazon. So
I'm still going through that detox, by the way, and the learning to slow down, sort of reprogramming old code that I've, living in LA for 20 years and, living in America for, my whole life. It's programmed, it's hardwired in us, I think. And it takes effort and time and patience and grace with yourself to kind of unlearn and reprogram and to slow down. But that's kind of that's the pursuit, is surrendering to that.
It's 100% the pursuit. Letting go is a lifelong pursuit, to be honest.
One of the things that I think that you're absolutely brilliant at is you're making this connection between fatherhood and leadership, right? Like you're coaching some really impressive, high powered executives, leaders, C-suite, but you're coming at it from a very human and personal level. Let me ask you, like, in whether your experience or conversations, what has fatherhood taught you about leadership that business never could?
Connection first. It's the easiest answer. Like the other day, my son is obsessed with making paper airplanes. I think it's because of Crunch Labs.
Same, by the way.
But I mean,
Yeah.
there are 50 paper airplanes on the floor, like 50. And so the other day I woke up, it was like Saturday, and I was like, hey buddy, I'm gonna throw out all the paper airplanes, just pick 2 or 3 of your favorite. And he just starts bawling, like just straight on crying. And I'm like, whoa, I missed the boat here, right? And I realized that instead of connecting with him first, I just went straight to trying to solve something. Like the house is cluttered, I'm going to solve this. And like I recognized it as soon as it happened. Like I got down, literally, like I got down on my knees so we're, eye to eye. I gave him a big hug and I asked him to, in the most painstaking detail possible, explain to me all the details about his favorite paper airplanes, because to him that was like a passion and something he was super into. And this is the example, and it's such a simple example, but it's like at work, we are taught like solve, fix, like move forward. And the truth is, we will, I guarantee you, be so much more successful as leaders with our strategies, with our teams, with everything, if the first thing we try to do with the people that collaborate with us, that work under us, that work with us, if we first try to connect with them, because that's going to make everything that we do together so much easier. And so that's what it is. It's also like being in the room and being like, okay, what are the emotions in the room right now? I do that in my house that I'm in, right, with my kids. Like, okay, there's a lot of tiredness today, right? Or there's a lot of this, right? Whatever this energy is. We don't do that enough when we're in a meeting with our team. Like, what is the emotional energy that's here? If we actually talk about that, and especially if we're taking on a big challenge as a team, and half of the people listening at some point will be laying off a ton of folks because of AI, that's a pretty emotional topic. So
Yeah.
talking about the things at an emotional level first and being comfortable enough with emotion, with our emotion and with the other emotion around us, makes us incredible leaders. And that, I think, primarily comes from training at home first. That's what we're leaving out, like big time, when we segregate our work life and our work leadership from our personal life and how we lead there.
I want to just magnify what you said, because connecting at a deep and emotional level, the story you just told about your son, this is your youngest?
No, my oldest, he's 9.
Oh, okay. When I just admitted to you like a few moments ago, like I've been stretched, I had almost the exact same situation with my son last night about his paper airplanes, about there's
Really?
paper and craziness. I'm not even kidding. This is like bizarre world. Get out of my fucking head. And I went to my natural reaction of order and control and cleaning up and tidying up and asking him to clean up. I was frustrated and I boiled over and I kind of lost my cool. And thank you. You've given me like a great dad coaching lesson. I didn't do it right then and there in terms of kind of looking at him and seeing eye to eye. Later on, I kind of apologized and explained, and admitted sort of what I could have done differently. We had a great conversation with it. But I love the way you kind of just handle the situation, and because it happens a lot. We're living in a small space, the need for control. And I think this goes with leadership and micromanaging your team, your staff, your employees. But I think my takeaway from what you just shared, and I think it's a brilliant insight, is connection on a human level, is how similar our experiences are as fathers, as leaders. You just told me something that happened to you with your kids. Like, I'm relating to the same exact thing, but we would have never known had we had this conversation. And that conversation usually never happens. And how freeing and liberating and encouraging and less scary is it for me as a father to be like, oh shit, Jeff's a pro at this and he's dealing with it too. And that level of communication and connection as fathers, but also as men, as business owners and entrepreneurs, is like takes so much of the weight off, man. It just kind of really just turns down the temperature around how easy and frictionless this can be if we just learn to connect on that level.
I had a family challenge last week and I called up my dad. There was no solution for the family challenge. It was with some relatives. And I remember my dad saying explicitly, like, I really wish there was a way I could solve this for you. And I just thought to myself, like, this is how we're trained to be, right? And I go, Dad, you don't need to solve it for me. Like, I was calling you because, like, I just needed you to hear it, right? And we're still like, we can talk about it. It's so ingrained in so many of us that when we're listening to something that makes us uncomfortable, our instinct is to solve for it. And many times that instinct is getting in the way of what the other person actually needs. And my favorite example of that, if anyone's ever Googled, it's not about the nail. There's like a 90-second video about a couple talking on a couch, and the woman has a nail sticking out of her head. She's complaining about how much her head hurts and how all of her sweaters are snagged, all of them. And he's like, well, if you just take out and she's like, it's not about the nail. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll just listen. And she's talking about how uncomfortable she is. And he's like, oh, that sounds really hard. And she goes, yes, thank you. It really is. Like, that's what she needed. She needed the connection. And we always have this debate with the leadership groups I have, which is like, should he just pull out the nail or should he listen first? And people are of both camps, right? Because it's an extreme example. But the point really is, like, change will not happen if the person is pulling the nail out of the head. Change will only happen if, like, that person realizes, like, and feels heard first, and then you move forward. And that's what we learn from our kids who have temper tantrums for, often no reason. My best friend has a son who's maybe 5 years older than mine. And I remember when he was having just the worst temper tantrum as a 5-year-old, and his dad turned to him and goes, is this a big deal or a little deal? And it was something like he couldn't open a cereal bar or something. And I remember his 5-year-old going, it's a big deal. And I was like, yeah,
Yes.
it's a big deal to him. And so if we're looking at all of these challenges through our lens, like, how good are we going to really be? There's perspective, and that perspective is useful for us. But that's not necessarily useful for connection. And once you get connection, man, you can solve a lot of things with your kids and with your teams.
How did your definition of success change between then and now? Then meaning before kids, before your move here, how you define success for yourself, and then how does it look now on this side of?
I don't think moving here changed it. I just feel less alone in my definition of success. I have always been a values-driven person, so my work, I've never thought, like, let me make a lot of money first and then, like, switch over to doing impactful or meaningful work. I'll
get to it later.
Yeah. I mean, I was only a few years into my career when I founded and ran IBM's sustainability consulting practice globally. So, I was doing it from the beginning. And so I think it's just that, well, it's a couple things. Now I'm comfortable in the discomfort of, like, money not always being the first priority, which means, like, there are times when there's a bit more financial uncertainty, but there's never any uncertainty about the person I am or the dad I think that I am or the way I engage with people that are important to me. And that means so much more to me than, like, financial certainty or just, like, this sort of superficial definition of success. The friends that I choose to make are ones that I can have real, meaningful, deep conversations with. And like I said, the guy hiking with me talking about money, I'll always be curious and give him a second chance, but, like, that's not the person that I'm gonna be building deep relationships with. And here it's a lot easier to find people that have the similar set of values. And it's great. And my kids go to this school where I also feel just the parents seem to get it. Like, there's no helicopter parenting. I have not seen.
That doesn't exist here.
have
Yeah.
not seen it at all. And I really love not seeing it. It's just great. At home, I try to do a lot more unstructured play where the kids like sometimes get bored, and maybe that's why they make a million paper airplanes. And when they want to engage, they come and find me and maybe we cook together, and we'll definitely have our time to do activities together. But I want things unstructured. I want them growing and exploring on their own.
So let me ask you about sort of leaving that legacy, that lasting impression on your kids. Like, what would you like for your kids to remember about how you worked or how you conducted yourself? Not just what you achieved or what you even said. We talk a lot about do as I do, not as I say. So what's that sort of untold lesson that you hope your kids will take from witnessing you, their father, inhabit this life?
There's a lot, because I try to father what I call, instead of fathering reactively, I try to father from intention. So one of them is that we are always learning and growing, asking for help. So I tell my kids what I'm trying to work on to be a better dad. I tell them, like, daddy's working on his tone of voice, and if you don't like my tone of voice, like, tell me. And that's actually hilarious, because two boys, so like one will kick the other, and I'll be like, you cannot, I'll raise they'll be like, Dad, you can't raise your tone of voice. And I'll be like, actually, yes, I can in this context. This is an okay context, right? So they use it against me, but the point
Right.
is they see me working on things and trying to be better. The other is, this is something that I treasure so much. Like, they know about the fatherhood work that I do. So we talk about what I do for a living in a really fun way. So when I was first interviewing, the first half dozen of the 200 ambitious dads that I've interviewed, a bunch of them mentioned, my kids, they have no idea what I do. And if I work at home, like, they see me go into this room and like, what the heck is daddy doing in there? And my son, around that same time, had a cool activity at school where parents would come in and talk about their careers. So I came in and told people that, I'm an executive coach and I help people with change. And to explain it, I made them all stand up and cross their arms one way, and then uncross their arms and try to cross them in the opposite way, right? We all cross our arms like when we're, sitting in one direction. So to cross them another way, it just feels a little weird. And I asked them to notice how that felt and like talk about it. And, we did a bunch of activities around that. And now my children literally know, what's daddy's job? Daddy helps people with change, and he helps people be better dads. And I could die a super proud, happy dad, just like, if that's all they think that I do. By the way, all is more than all. It's like it makes me teary eyed right now. Like, that's wonderful. So that's what I want them to take away, that they know that, like, whatever it is that I do, I'm obviously leading from a values perspective on all of it. And I'm never trying to stop. Like, the next thing, I interviewed a dad, and he's like, oh, we put our family values in our placemats. And I was like, oh, that's a freaking brilliant.
Wow.
And so now I'm thinking about like doing this, right? And some of the stuff needs to evolve. Like, my kids are getting older and I want them to be more aware of their physical bodies. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll make a value around like understanding their bodies and listening to their bodies. And so things can always change and evolve, but I'm always trying to be intentional in this stuff. And what better way to build a career than one where you get to so selfishly learn so much and help the people around you as I do with the work that I'm currently doing. So I love it.
Well, and thank you for doing it. I'm a recipient and benefactor. I've learned a lot from you as well. And if anything, it's just allowed me to kind of learn to share and to open up. And that vulnerability is incredibly powerful. So let me just kind of wrap up with you. This is kind of how I like to end every episode. Obviously, the title of the show, In Pursuit of Purpose, but I leave it to the end because it's not the easiest to answer in a succinct way. So what does purpose mean to you? But I'm going to caveat that, because I usually just say, what is your purpose? And that's broad, but I want to caveat that, something I've been learning in this season of life, because I do think it's constantly changing and evolving. So what is your purpose in this particular season of life?
I know my broader answer. But in this particular season of life,
I'll take both, by the way.
okay. Well, I mean, my broader purpose is to like help individuals unleash their like full and unique potential in the world and really discover what that is. I think everyday level right now, my purpose is really to support fathers in particular and leaders more broadly, and like seeing who they are in a more like holistic way, and seeing how the whole of them and being engaged with the whole of them can really make their lives so much richer for themselves and the people around them. So it's a lot around transformation. It's really about helping people transform, but in particular dads. And I do a lot of work around purpose, and when I talk about purpose, I always tell people purpose is, it's not something that you discover. It's not like this like light bulb goes off or you get struck by lightning, like, my purpose, I've discovered it. Purpose is something that you build, that you engage, you get feedback, and then you engage some more. We can't have purpose without being exposed to new things, right? Like the purpose that I have around fatherhood couldn't exist without becoming a dad. It couldn't exist without me experiencing the challenges I had early on as a father. And so we build purpose intentionally, just like we build our fatherhood intentionally, just like we build our leadership intentionally. All of those things lead us to developing our purpose. And then, oh, by the way, our purpose can change. There's a woman that I met recently, and unfortunately her brother just passed away from brain cancer, and she was helping care for him literally for a year until he died in her family home. And that was her purpose, was caring for her brother. And now she needs a new purpose. And that's quite all right. And that's quite understandable. And so our purposes can have different seasons. When my kids were even just a year or two younger, I'd say like my purpose first and foremost is to be like a dad. That's still always front and center. But I think now there's more sort of school education involved in that too. And so that my purpose can kind of widen its lens a little bit.
Strong opinions and beliefs held loosely, right? Deep conviction with the ability to adapt and morph. And again, in this season of life, that's beautiful. You've been practicing. Well said, well articulated, my friend. Well, look, thank you for doing this. For those people who are listening and hopefully kind of taking a page from your playbook and giving themselves a little more patience and grace as a father, as a leader. I've kind of taken a lot from the conversation, just kind of relationship with you. So I'm grateful, and to be continued, man. Onwards.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to In Pursuit of Purpose. If this episode helped you, please follow the show, leave a quick review, and maybe even share it with someone who's been building something meaningful of their own. And remember, you are more than ready for this next step. Head over to my website at chaseryanfriedman.com, and you can start building your own purpose positioning strategy, explore free resources, and even find more inspiration for the road ahead. I'm Chase Friedman. Onwards.